Good morning, everyone. Or at least, oh god, it's morning for me at least. We're going to be reacting to Top 7 Red Army Myths, World War II by Military History Visualized. This was suggested by Zexel42, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. But, um, yeah, I actually really enjoy Military History Visualized. Oh my god, this is 30 minutes long. Okay. I'm gonna make this a two-part series. Okay. Because usually my videos of 10-minute videos are usually like 20 minutes long or so. But anyways, I need to stop talking because this is gonna take a while to get through. Yeah, I like military history visualized. That's just what I wanted to say. Let's get started. I'm gonna stop a bit.
Let's look at some common myths about the Red Army in the Second World War and how they hold up against current academic research. Because in some cases you might be quite surprised, at least I was sometimes.
I like his accent.
Let's start with the myth that the Soviet Union possessed a pool of unlimited manpower.
Oh my gosh, exactly. Okay, I'm trying to think. By 1941, 1942, the Axis actually had more population than the Soviets did. So the Axis, they actually, for a while in the war, they had more manpower than the Soviet Union. Um, anyways, I'm not supposed to be talking about the Axis. I'm supposed to be talking about the Soviet Union. Um, they were using women, and all that, and it's not because they were like really progressive. It was because they were lacking manpower and they need people to, you know, defend their country. Of course, Germany didn't do that because they were a lot more, I guess, conservative, I guess you could say. But when it comes to that sort of thing, but yeah, I definitely agree with this.
This notion already appeared before the Second World War and was still in use during the Cold War. Yet if we take a closer look, things get interesting. Some of you might know that in the last stages of the war, there were some issues.
Yeah, and the later stages of the war, they were like basically scraping the barrel at that point.
Manpower. But already in 1943, to 2 years into the war, there were some issues. For example, as the regime faced a manpower shortage in 1943, it launched a special recruitment effort directed at Komsomol youth and set a target of 160,000 men to be distributed among 10 different military districts and fronts.
Really?
As you can imagine, this situation did not get better over the course of the war.
Yeah.
By the second half of 1944, the Red Army, and particularly the infantry, was suffering from acute manpower shortages. Those reserves that might have seemed almost bottomless in 1941 had proven otherwise, thanks to a large extent to the operational and strategic failures of Stalin and the High Command early in the war. And
yeah, like the Soviets, they lost millions and millions of men, and they kept getting encircled. And the thing is, Stalin, he wouldn't allow his people to retreat from like he would. It was kind of like what Hitler did at the end of the war. He would let his soldiers be encircled. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to think if this is actually correct or not. Because, yeah. Yeah. Um, like, that happened with Leningrad, for example. He didn't allow his people to get the heck out of there, including his civilians. And that's a very large reason why they had manpower shortages.
in particular during 1941 to 1942. To deal with this, the Red Army used various measures. One was to fill up their ranks with men from recently liberated territories, in some cases with limited or no
I like how liberated is in quotes.
training at all. Also, the conscription age was raised in some regions in October 1944 to up to 45 years of age for those who were not engaged in war production. Similarly, although the Red Army already recruited women in 1941 and 1942, more women were mobilized later on, although not used as infantry, which had the higher.
Wow, I did not know that they had women before the war. That's interesting.
as losses. Another way to deal with a lack of manpower was the use of foreign formations. Soviet sponsored Polish, Czechoslovak, and other national formations such as Romanians and Yugoslavians, fighting alongside and effectively.
Oh yeah, can you like explain this to me? I also have a book about World War II. Or Romanians, was it U? Why is it a U instead of an O? I see that a lot. I see that a good amount of times, but why? I haven't looked it up because I'm too lazy, so can you like comment that? Whoops. There.
As part of the Red Army would, understandably, given increasing Soviet manpower issues, oversee heavy action later in the war. This clearly indicates that the Soviet Union did not possess an unlimited pool of manpower. Quite on the contrary, already in mid-war there were some issues. We all know about German units fighting well below authorized strength. And in late war, this was also not uncommon for the Red Army. According to this quote, the Rifle Regiment was the basic infantry unit. But by 1944, it rarely attained anywhere near the authorized strength of around 2,000 people.
Hold on. Rarely attained anywhere.
Man. The next myth, at least partially, originated with German memoirs. Namely, that the Red Army destroyed the German Panzerwaffe, literally tank force.
Oh, I haven't heard about this one before.
At the Battle of Kursk. Guderian noted in his memoirs, the tank forces, refreshed with great efforts, were unable to be used for a long time due to heavy losses.
Oh, okay. It's saying that there was a bunch of panzers that were destroyed, I guess. And that's the myth.
Personnel and equipment.
Losses of personnel and equipment. Timely restoration.
The timely restoration for the defense of the Eastern Front, and even more so for the defense against the Allies' imminent landing on the Western Front in the following spring, was in question. Yet, as with so many of Guderian's statements in his memoirs...
Oh gosh. Oh my, I actually have Guderian's diary. It's really interesting. But yeah, I don't like Guderian very much. He likes to blame other people. Or, like, yeah, he blames other people, and I don't like that because some of the time he's in the wrong, right?
Is wrong. Dr. Roman Töppel notes in his book on the Battle of Kursk that the battle did not have a devastating effect on the German army, contrary to what generals like Heinz Guderian and Friedrich.
Really? Well, I guess that makes sense. I guess.
Willem von Mellenthin or Walter Malimont.
It's just so weird to think about how they were able to launch their offensive at Kharkov, the Kharkov offensive with whatever his name is, Manstein, right? And then they launched an offensive at Kursk, and that apparently doesn't have a devastating effect. And then the Soviets have this humongous offensive where they take a ton of land. Later in 1943. That's just weird to me.
Claimed in the memoirs after.
Like, how are the Soviets able to do that if the Germans? I don't know. I don't know enough about that, I guess.
War. Rather, it was the summer battle of 1943 on the Eastern Front in general, not Operation Citadel, specifically, which greatly reduced German fighting power.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Similarly, Gregory Liedtke notes, while there is no doubt that fighting around Kursk had negative implications upon Germany's ultimate strategic situation, the operation...
Wait, why did I say that makes sense? I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what I'm talking about. No, that does not make... I'm sorry. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't know why I said that makes sense, because it doesn't.
German army remained an extremely aggressive and dangerous opponent until the very end of the war. Furthermore, Zetterlin and Frankson note that neither the German nor Soviet losses in men and equipment were particularly high. Or to put it even more clearly, certain basic facts can sometimes demonstrate that a battle produced losses or a situation from which one side not the other. This can hardly apply to Kursk, since neither German nor Soviet casualties or equipment losses were particularly high. And as such, the claim that the Battle of Kursk was the death of the Panzerwaffe sounds dramatic, but as so often, drama is closer to fiction and manipulation than reality. The next myth is about the so-called blocking detachment. This one achieved widespread notoriety with the movie Enemy at the Gates, which depicted these detachments gunning down Soviet conscripts in case they retreated. This depiction is an extreme misrepresentation. Yet, let's take a closer look. Blocking detachments are very complex. Since there were two types, the ones of the Red Army and the ones of the NKVD, which was the predecessor of the KGB. So-called blocking detachments had been formed by the NKVD, largely performing functions carried out by military police in other armies, but with greater zeal. As well, by the Red Army in order to provide spine to units at the front line. Additionally, already in the Soviet-Finnish Winter War, blocking detachments were used as well.
These cards are sort of like blocking the videos, and I want to read the title.
Next, let's look at blocking detachments and what they actually did. Because here it gets complicated.
I actually never heard of blocking detachments before. It's interesting.
For instance, Rees notes that they were usually very badly equipped. Blocking detachments had only small arms, rifles and pistols, and therefore were not considered tactical units. In fact, if the front lines broke during an attack, rather than gunning down fleeing soldiers, as Smith would have it, blocking detachments usually fled in advance of the retreat. Yet to a certain degree, this seems to somewhat contradict the use of blocking detachments as combat units, as described by Alexander Hill. The NKVD document concern went on to highlight with considerable disapproval how in a number of cases blocking detachments had been used as combat units by frontline commanders. Supposedly consisting of some of the best and most reliable troops, the temptation for commanders to use the detachments in the frontline combat roles during a crisis is understandable. Yet, the Red Army was a huge organization, and without doubt there were various instances of blocking detachments at different points in time. The duties of these detachments were to prevent soldiers from fleeing and retreating or leaving their units without authorization. As such, their duties were similar to that of a military police. Depending on the circumstances, soldiers could be sent back, detained, or outright shot. Rees points out, in fact, depending on the personalities of the members, blocking detachments sometimes did not detain soldiers, but merely warned them to get back to the units before they got into trouble.
It's interesting because I always hear this, stereotype. All the Soviets, they would just shoot everyone who retreated and all that. Like, it's always over dramatized.
Whereas Hill quotes a particular report that seems to be more related to the popular depiction and is from the early days of the Battle of Stalingrad. On 14 September 1942, troops of rifle regiments of the 399th Rifle Division, 62nd Army defending Stalingrad apparently fell back in panic under enemy pressure, abandoning the defensive position. In response, the head of the blocking detachment, Junior Lieutenant of State Security Al Mann, ordered his detachment to open fire over the head of those retreating. As a result, the personnel of these regiments were halted, and within 2 hours, the regiments had occupied their previous defensive positions. As such, it is understandable that certain soldiers saw the blocking detachments as a second front or enemy. Private Dubovnik told his fellow soldiers, the organization of blocking detachments, this is the second front. From the front we will be shot by the Germans, from the rear by blocking detachments. And if we look at the numbers, it seems that blocking detachments shooting their own troops was likely the exception than the norm. Rees notes the numbers for Stalingrad and Caucasus from 1st of August to October 15, 1942. The vast majority of the 140,000 men detained, 131,000 were returned to their units or reassigned to different units. The authorities arrested
That is a lot.
arrested less than 3%, 3,980
So how many were killed then?
of those detained. Subsequently, of the arrested 2,776 sergeants and soldiers were assigned to penal companies, and 185
Oh, we're just talking about the detained men. Oh my, I cannot read apparently.
officers were assigned to penal battalions. Finally, by decree of military tribunals.
But I wonder how many actually. Wait, let me read this just to see. Oh, it says it right here. Oh my gosh, I need to actually read. Okay, wow, that is a very small number compared to that, the 140,000.
1,189 soldiers were shot by firing squads. Meanwhile, Hill gives the numbers for 1941. By October 10, 1941, the deputy head of the special section apparatus of the NKVD could claim in a report to the People's Commissar of State Security, Beria, that 657,000 servicemen separated from their units and running away from the front had been intercepted by special sections and blocking detachments of the NKVD, of whom 10,000 were recorded as having been shot, of 25,000 arrested for various crimes, including being traitors, cowards, and panic mongers and deserters, which would mean about 1.6% shot in 1941. And we should not forget to look at the bigger picture here as well.
Wait, but wasn't the order by Stalin? I think it was called Order 227. I thought that was. Oh God, what was that? I thought it was in 1942 where that order was made.
According to Maudsley, during the war, according to published statistics, a total of 990,000 Soviet soldiers were condemned to punishment by military tribunals. Some 420,000 of these were sent to punitive units and 440,000 to imprisonment. No fewer than 158,000 were sentenced to be shot. The number of German servicemen executed, some 13,000 to 15,000, was considerably lower. Thanks to Andrew here for pointing out that sentenced to be shot does not necessarily mean that they were shot. As such, I looked at a highly regarded German source, which notes that.
So, that's weird. Why? So were just some of them let off the hook or something? Or did they escape?
Numbers of executed members of the Wehrmacht at about 15 to 20,000. Those of the Soviets at 175,000. Now, to put this in contrast, the French executed 102, the British 40.
Oh, wow.
And the USA 146 of the service members.
I know they're not to scale, but still, the graphs there look so tiny. Wow.
Note that for the US, 5 of these men were executed after the war.
Why?
In short, the Soviets did execute far more of their own soldiers than other countries, yet blocking detachments were rarely used to gun down their own men. Instead, they usually sent soldiers back to their units and or the front. The next myth is probably the most controversial and complicated one, namely that the Red Army relied heavily on so-called human wave attacks or human wave tactics.
I don't think there were really many instances of that. Yeah, I can't really think of any at the top of my head.
Now, why is this complicated? Well, if you look broadly at the literature,
is it because of bias or something?
There are plenty of indications that the Red Army on the tactical level was resorting to a rather blunt approach. For instance, David Glantz notes, the worst of these habits was the propensity of some commanders, particularly staff guard representatives and front and army commanders, to squander valuable manpower and equipment needlessly.
Yeah. If you look at a video showing World War II every single day, or if you just look at there's a great video by E-Story. It's like History of Eastern Europe, clever name. They basically show the Soviet Union, like they basically show Germany versus the Soviet Union, and they show all the divisions and all that. It's really cool. Um, and you constantly see the Soviets doing all these counterattacks everywhere, and as they're saying here, yeah, it's just basically wasting their manpower and resources.
Particularly by planning and conducting costly frontal assaults during penetration operations, sometimes repeatedly, after it was apparent the penetration could not succeed, when other less costly methods of penetrating defenses might have succeeded. Similarly, another author notes, only speedy reactions would result in preemption of the enemy's deployment and seizure of the initiative. Hence the Soviet preference at the tactical level for simply, easily understood, and rapidly implemented battle drills. This was also related to the limited time the Red Army spent on training, since the priority was mostly on recruiting and training by some unit was just an afterthought. Now for the whole debate we need to take a look at the bigger picture, which means understanding the basic difference between tactics, operations, and strategy. Simply put, if space, time, and force levels are lower, it is closer to tactics. If they are high, it's closer to strategy. For a full explanation, watch this video. Now the issue is that the Soviets focused more on the operational and strategic level, as such they were willing to sacrifice on the tactical level, not only in training, but also when it came to combat losses. The main focus was to achieve a breakthrough as fast as possible in order to allow for the exploitation and thus avoid a war of attrition. This likely led to fewer losses in the long run, but initial assaults had very high losses. This was of course in stark contrast to the Western Allies, as noted by German veterans in Normandy. Germans were surprised that artillery barrages were not followed up by determined infantry assaults. An experienced corporal in the German 275th Infantry Division summed up German attitude. Americans used their infantry cautiously. If they used it the way the Russians do, they would be in Paris now.
Well, maybe, but they would have lost a lot more units.
Whereas the Western Allies focused on keeping their losses low and relied more on firepower, the Red Army focused on speed in order to overwhelm the Wehrmacht.
Just like the Wehrmacht did.
And the key to success in the offensive was speed. If tempo was not being gained from the start, the Germans would not be destabilized and forced into an increasingly belated reactive posture, and the battle would become an attritional grind after the fashion of the Orel operation of the previous year.
Yeah, it seems like the Soviets and the Germans, they sort of had the same idea. And this is probably why the losses on the Eastern Front are so humongous.
Casualties would be high, and the result inconclusive. Better that the first echelon endured heavy losses to ensure a quick breakthrough, so the exploitation echelon could accomplish the enemy's destruction through fast-moving, lower-cost, and decisive maneuver. Of course, on the German side, these assaults often, especially for regular soldiers, appeared just like human wave attacks that were unsophisticated. Yet the sophistication usually only becomes apparent if one looks at the operational map in later.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm a bit confused. Is it saying that the Soviets were in extremely large numbers, or that they were lacking equipment, or both? Because that's what I thought at the beginning, that it was just saying that they were lacking a bunch of equipment, or something like that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just talking about the amount of soldiers, and I think it's interesting because on paper, you look at the amount of Soviet divisions, and they outnumber Germany by like a ton, especially later in the war, right? But if you look closer, Tick explains this amazingly. It turns out that the Soviet divisions are smaller than the German divisions. So instead of the Soviets outnumbering them like 6-1, it's more like 2 or 3-1 by 1944 or so.
On the tactical level, it was not really apparent, according to this author. The Red Army of summer 1944 demonstrated a growing subtlety in its conduct of operations, even while tactics remained supremely, if necessary, unsubtle. Over time, the Soviets, especially the mobile formations, also became very capable on the tactical level, but this was in late war, and the brunt of the fighting, especially in the initial breakthroughs, was done by the infantry. As such, I would say this myth is not completely unfounded, but its implications that the Red Army fought like an unsophisticated meat grinder is clearly wrong.
Yeah.
On the tactical level, the Red Army for most of the war had limited capabilities for the infantry. Additionally, it did not help that some generals did not care much about losses. Therefore, it is not surprising that many Russians today still categorize some Red Army marshals and generals as bloody and others as human. Yet, on the operational and strategic level, the capabilities of the Red Army in late war were quite sophisticated. As so often, it gets a bit more complicated if we take a closer look. Next is the myth of Operation Barbarossa.
Okay, well, that was half of the video, or a little bit more. And tomorrow, we'll be reacting to the other half. So that should be fun, right? So, yeah, thank you all for watching. Again, I'm a big fan of military history visualized. So if you really want to see me react to them, I would be more than happy to, right? But yeah, again, if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below, I I look at every single comment, obviously, because there's not that many. It's pretty manageable. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Subscribe and have a nice day.